Hi, and welcome to the weekly college football pick'em show here at thegruelingtruth.net, brought to you by Gridiron Mo, an interactive football game app which pits you against other football fans across the country in predicting the next play within a live NFL game. Think you're smarter than the average fan? See for yourself at Gridiron Mo through this website, thegruelingtruth.net, or at gridironmo.com. My name's Oz Davis. I'll be the alleged host for this discussion on college football. Tonight is our special Final Four edition of the Pick'em Show. Last night or yesterday or whatever, 24 hours ago, we did a preview of 8 or 9 games running through New Year's Day, and today we're going to talk about the big ones. Joining the regular bunch on the show tonight, again, is Bill Searcy, formerly of the University of Alabama Crimson Tide, including the national champion teams of 78 and 79. He also played with the Houston Gamblers and San Diego Chargers and is the author of High Tide, A Story of Football, Freefall, and Forgiveness. Welcome to the show again, Bill. Happy holidays. How are you doing tonight?
Merry Christmas, guys. Glad to be back with you.
All righty. Also, with the former professional player is the usual motley crew of grueling truthers. I'd like to welcome the big losers of the pick'em portion of this show from last week. I'm never going to get tired of saying that. Unfortunately, it's probably going to end next week. First up is the next co-star of the Kia Tecmo Bowl Bo Jackson commercials, Brian Schmidt. Brian, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing good, but I'm still struggling with this whole biggest loser thing. I mean, we're merely a game behind. And like I said last night, I should get a half game because I got Hawaii right. So I should get like an extra game and a half on that. But.
Well, you're in a mathematical tie with our fearless leader. So I mean, I just relish every week. I'm the big loser on one of these shows that I do. Every week I'm the big loser. And that's right. And with capital B, capital L, and Mike Goodpaster relishes in telling our, audience so, I'm just enjoying my time in the sun. That's all. No offense. Finally, also joining us tonight is the fearless leader of the gruelingtruth.net and a man who is a master of predictions, usually Mike Goodpaster. Mike, how are you?
Well, I still am in first place on the college football pick'em by a game over Brian, and I think you're 2 games behind. So you're still the biggest loser, Oz. But I like the fact that you milked that for 10 minutes so you could be the star of the show, as always. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, but now I pass the ball over because now I let the folks who really know what they're talking about do the talking. We're going to be
got more guests introduced?
I guess we don't have too much to offer then, I suppose. So let's just babble about some college football. What should we talk about first? Let's talk Peach Bowl. Washington versus Alabama. I wanted to ask before we get started, Bill, you can tell us about your awesome Crimson Tide team in just a moment here and why they're going to win this game. But I wanted to ask you this. You played in the 1980s. You played before the college football playoff. You won 2 national championships. Do you ever wish that you had played in a national championship? Do you wish you had had that format back in your day?
Yeah, I mean, I like the format now a little better. Even though now we benefited from the way it was back in those days because it was, we weren't doing it in a playoff scenario, and if you won one of the few big bowl games back in that day, you had a chance of being voted to be the national champion anyway. But I would have liked to have played during the era like they're doing now, and I mean, I think you get a much more realistic, true champion, and I'm kind of a proponent to actually even have more than 4 teams eventually. But I think the 4-team selection, the way it is now, I think anyway that it's better than it used to be. I feel like it is. Although adding those additional games for these guys, I'm not so sure I'm that excited about so many extra games. I don't know if we shouldn't possibly reduce our regular season by a game or two if we're going to play this many playoff games. But that's just my personal opinion. But, yeah, to answer your original question, I like the system as it is now.
Okay. Actually, hold on. I'm going to come back to you about the game in just a second, but I'm going to go to Mike on this one because Mike talks stuff on this show regularly about 16-team tournaments, 32-team tournaments, whatnot. How do you feel about that, Mike? Would you be willing to reduce the regular season to have a bigger tournament?
Well, I think they should. A regular season can be done by November the 1st.
Okay.
I mean, that's what they do. Division I AA, or whatever they call it now, is a 32-team playoff. They get done early November, and their championship games usually are around Christmas. I think maybe they play it January 1st now and give them 2 weeks off between.
No, they play they're done, and they play the championship game. It's like January. It's like the weekend before the championship, but they end up like a 3 or 4 week layoff. It's crazy. Because
I think all this came back. I don't think you didn't hear a lot of cries for the college bowl system or the playoffs until the mid-'80s, and I think the thing that really started the ball rolling was BYU in the 84-85 season.
84, yeah.
Yeah, because we were going to have Joe on tonight, Joe Kelly from Washington. I know he was sick, couldn't really talk, coughing all the time, but I'm sure he would have brought this up. But you had Washington who goes and beats Oklahoma. They beat 3 or 4 top 10 teams that year. BYU beating pretty much nobody. They slipped by 24-17 a 6-6 Michigan team in the Holiday Bowl and were proclaimed as the national champions. And I think that is what really started the ball rolling on people thinking that the system was really flawed.
Yep. That was exactly what did it. Those BYU teams that would go undefeated and rack up 1 million points and just play nobody. They'd be playing the Wyomings and New Mexico states of the world,
In New Mexico.
But anyway, the University of New Mexico as well, who was awesome back in those days. Not. In any case, Bill, I wanted to get back to you. Okay, so you mentioned before on this show, Bill, that this particular University of Alabama team is one of the best you've ever seen. Can you reiterate on that and tell us why your team is going to destroy Washington in this game?
Well, I think, and I think I said this, that my belief is that this is the best defense that Alabama has ever had, including last year's defense, which was pretty good. Just because of, I think they probably got 6 or 7 guys on that starting 11 defense. It'll be drafted. I'm not sure how many of that 6 or 7 will be first-rounders, but the majority of those will be first-rounders. And just because of their speed, and they're just flying around to the ball this year. And this group has played. You got to realize that the guys that are on this defense or on this team have been on this big stage 3 years in a row. So a game like this for them it's not a new deal. They've been here, done that, and so they know how to act. They know how to prepare physically and mentally. And on defense, they just don't make a whole lot of mistakes. Now, the only thing I can compare, I watched Washington play USC. And I know it's a different USC team than the one Alabama played in the very beginning of the year.
Yes.
But in watching that game, I was not overly impressed with Washington's offensive line. I saw, as the game wore on a little bit, I saw USC's defensive line kind of manhandling them and more or less just kind of strength on strength. I don't think USC's defensive line had the athleticism, the speed or quickness as Alabama's defensive line, and I just don't think Washington offensively will have a great game. I don't think he'll have enough time to throw the ball. However, with Ross being extremely dangerous, if he does have more time than I think he's going to have, it'll be a closer game. But I really don't believe that. I think we're talking about I'm saying 21-point game here.
Wow.
If Alabama comes to the party like I think they will, I guess the question mark is Alabama's offense. But Alabama's had several weeks to prepare, and Coach Saban has had a pretty good record. When you when you give him a lot of time to prepare, it's not a good thing usually for the opponent. So I'm pretty confident right now in saying what I'm saying.
Okay. Brian, I get the feeling you're going to back this up. Do you agree with this assessment?
Yeah, for the most part, I am. The one thing that's with Washington, Chris Peterson, he's another guy that, and we saw this when he was at Boise State. If you give him time to prepare, he can put some pretty good game plans together. The problem right now with Washington is, again, and I agree with his assessment on their offensive line. Also, defensively, as good as they are, I know, a couple of their key players are not going to be playing due to season-ending injuries. Joe Mathis was one of their defensive ends. I know he's out, and I know there's another. I think Victor, is another player. I think he's also out too. So, two of their key defensive players got injured and are out for the season. So, that's another thing that's kind of going against them. I just don't think that at the end of the day, I think it could potentially be a closer game than 21 points. But at the end of the day, I just don't think that they're going to be able to do enough with Alabama's defense offensively. And the one thing that Washington has struggled with all year, even though they've been very good defensively, is they struggle with mobile quarterbacks. And that's been something that they have struggled with. So I just don't think there's enough there for them to be able to win this game.
Well, I think that if Washington could establish any kind of running game, and just watching Myles Gaskin, and obviously he's a good running back, and if they could establish any kind of a running game, I would give them a little bit more due, but I don't think that they're going to be able to establish a running game against Alabama's defense. And with that, once Alabama makes you kind of a one-trick pony, and they can just pin their ears back and rush, it becomes a really difficult day.
Which they're going to do. Yeah. Okay. Now the point spread on this game is 14 points. You guys have got it going a bit further than that, a bit greater gap than that. Now, Mike, I get the feeling you're going to go with Washington. I, too, can make the case for Washington. Do you want to go first, or are you going to believe me that I have Washington picked already?
Well, just go ahead. I waited this long, and you rambled on.
I didn't ramble on. That wasn't me.
I'll go this. I think the one advantage that Washington has over most of the teams that Alabama's played is they do have a balanced offense. Where, with Alabama, you're playing Ole Miss, you got to stop the pass. You play in LSU, you got to stop the run. You don't have to worry about two things. I think it's a great point about their offensive line. I think their offensive line is very good. I don't know that they can block for Browning long enough to get the ball down the field. Myles Gaskin's a very good running back. And I think it all comes down to Browning and Hurts and who turns the ball over. And I think you might see a couple turnovers by both guys. I think both defenses are very good. I think Alabama's going to have a hard time running the ball on Washington. Washington's big up front. They can stop the run. They've got a big-time secondary. So I think this is a close game. Mm-hmm. And Chris Peterson has been in situations where he was supposed to get beat worse at a bowl game than this at Boise State. Was it 2006 or 2007? He pulled one of the greatest upsets of all time, ran a hook and lateral, Statue of Liberty, beats Oklahoma and Adrian Peterson when he was at Boise State. So I think Chris Peterson is on the level with a Saban and a Meyer. I don't think he's right there with him, but I think he's right below him.
Okay. All right. So are you going to take Washington? You're going to go on the record, Washington?
No. Or I haven't made up my mind yet. Go ahead. See if you can convince me.
Okay. All right. I want to also reference the Bill on this. Now, Bill, you said this was a very experienced team, and it is. But the X factor here, I think, is going to be a quarterback. Okay, there's a couple of I don't know. For me, there's a couple of red letter statistics that jump out at me. Okay, all right. Hurts is number one in the country this year in fumbles. He's got 10. Okay, and they're facing Washington, which is number one in my favorite stat of all time, the turnover differential. They're number one in the country in this stat. Okay, plus I do not believe that Hurts has probably seen in his career the sort of secondary that Washington is throwing at him in this game. I mean, they've got 2 all-pro cornerbacks out there. They've got a couple of all-pro safeties out there as well. I mean, this is a heck of a pass defense. I mean, do you think Hurts can perform?
Well, you're right. The one thing that, and I'll speak for a minute negative against Hurts like you just did, is that and he's had a lot of turnovers and fumbles this year, and the one thing is seems to have had more fumbles towards the end of the year, the last few games, and has been extremely lucky in getting the ball back and not giving it away. If he continues that trend against Washington, you're right. I believe that it will become a problem because Washington has had a great ratio, and they do have a couple of lockdown cornerbacks, which I don't think he's seen 2 of them in one game as good as they are. But I just think that Alabama, and whether we will run the ball or not, I think we're a better running team than people realize or that we've even shown. And I'm hoping that they will run the ball a little bit more than allowing Hurts to try to win the game passing. If we have to rely on him passing to win the game, I think we get in trouble. So
okay, okay. I've also got this one. I like Jake Browning in this situation and his offense, and here's why. Browning had 42 TDs this year against just 7 interceptions. Okay. 12 times this team has scored 31 or more points. They've averaged, over 44 points a game. Now, I know they had some cream puffs this year, but they also played some top 20 teams. They looked pretty good in their last game against, number 8 Colorado, I think it was. I think it doesn't matter who you're playing. That's a lot of points. They're scoring a lot of points against some quality programs there. And I know they've not faced a pass rush like they have at Alabama, but still, Browning and company are going to put some points on the board, I think. So I'm going to go out on the limb here and say everything falls into place and Washington comes away with the upset. I'm going to go with that. What do you think?
Right.
You going to join me? Join me, Mike.
Well, you already know I am. I've been saying since week 3 I thought they were the best team in the country. I don't think necessarily they're the best team, but I think this is a good matchup. Which you said, I think Hurts is going to turn the ball over. If they can't run the ball, he's going to be forced to throw it. As Bill himself said, if that happens, they're in trouble. I think the whole key to the game is the first 10 minutes. Because Washington, when they come out, they're going to get punched in the mouth by Alabama. If they can weather that storm, it's kind of like Rocky 2 when Rocky Balboa was fighting Apollo Creed, and Mickey told him if you survive the first round, you'll win the fight. Same thing here.
Yeah.
I like to use I like to use a Rocky, metaphor every time I do a show.
Yeah, it was a great, very realistic, very realistic movie.
Obviously I'm a little partial. So, but I think Alabama's depth on defense is going to become a problem for Washington. I still don't believe Washington can handle the pass rush that they're going to bring, and we have some pretty good defensive backs ourselves. So, which direction I'm going anyway. I didn't have to say that.
The reason I like the shot for an upset here is this: Chris Peterson. You watched the Boise State-Oklahoma game. The one thing about him, and it's the same thing that makes Urban Meyer a great coach, same thing that makes Nick Saban a great coach. They're not afraid to lose the game. They will try whatever they think they have to try to win the game, and that makes Washington even that much more dangerous. And you can say the same thing about Dabo Swinney. And the thing is, usually when you see the Final Four teams or you see a Super Bowl, those coaches, not last year necessarily in the Super Bowl, but those coaches are guys that aren't afraid to do whatever they have to do to try to win the game, where a lot of guys will get a tight asshole then and play everything close to the vest and be afraid to lose the game. He's not going to be afraid to lose it. So either Washington wins this in a close, exciting game, or they get totally destroyed.
Well, the one thing I can say, one of the things I can say in positive for Washington is Chris Peterson, the coach, and also you just said it. They're coming to Atlanta with literally nothing to lose.
Nothing to lose. Yep.
And he can lay it. He can tell his guys, look, we're going to leave it all out here. We're not saving anything for another game. We got to pin our ears back and we got to go. And that's an advantage. Whereas Alabama can do the same thing, but they feel like if they don't win this game, that their season has really become a failure, and that's just the mindset I know that they have down here. So they possibly come out a little tight against Washington.
Well, and the greatest defense in college football history was your 1979 Alabama team.
Well, they were good.
They only gave up double digits twice the entire year.
Yeah,
the other 10 games, they gave up 32 points total.
I'm not slighting my teammates. They were great.
I know. It's just I don't ever remember seeing a defense as suffocating as that. And Penn State had a hell of an offense in that Sugar Bowl, and you guys completely took them apart.
Shut them down. Yep.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm talking about all 11. I don't know. I can't believe I'm arguing with you about my team.
Well, I'll tell you another one would be that Miami Hurricane team in 2002, 2001.
Yeah, it's kind of hard for me to compare eras, and different types of football and different types of coaches, and things were just a lot different. There wasn't as much parity as there is now back in those days either. And so, I don't know. This defense this year is
Bill, weren't the schedules tougher for you guys back then?
Well, I think the schedules were probably tougher, but I just don't know. I've just watched this team so much this year, and the way they talk about suffocating, the way they suffocate people. Maybe I just need to go back and relook at 1979 again. Maybe that's it.
Yeah, but I also think the SEC was not very good. And, they played a USC team that was not what they were when Sam Darnold, the freshman, became quarterback.
Right.
So my other question is here, with the offenses they played, I think it's hard to judge, too. Now, if they come down and totally shut out Washington, totally shut down Clemson or Ohio State, then I'll agree with you.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Well, we'll talk after the Washington game.
Yeah.
All right.
Next Monday or Tuesday. Because previous championship game where Washington will be playing Ohio State or Clemson. I'm kidding.
Roll Tide.
Brian, I'll give Brian last word on the Peach Bowl with the addendum that I'm going to go to you first on the Fiesta Bowl. Brian, last words on the Peach Bowl?
Well, it just comes down to and I agree with everything that's been said here. When Peterson in a situation, 2007 Fiesta Bowl at Boise State. He's proven that he's a great coach, great game plan. And I agree. I think that Washington is going to come out with every bullet and bomb that they can possibly get. I just think at the end of the day, Alabama's got too much defensively that I just think Washington is not going to be able. Now, I don't believe it's going to be a 21-point game. I think, 14, 17 points is about right. But if Washington wins this game, it's going to be because Alabama turns the ball over, and Washington, again, great game plans. You're going to see some trick plays. You're going to see different things. Washington is able to get a couple trick play, lucky touchdown kind of things against Alabama, where now Alabama starts to reel a little bit and starts going, oh, what's going on? And now they start winning a game like that, 2017. But I think Alabama's, going to win this game 27-14.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So just right out of the point spread. Okay, so you won't be gambling on this one. Right. All right. Let's move on to the Fiesta Bowl. Clemson versus Ohio State. I'm not going to say too much to kick this off because I want to get right to Brian, the Ohio State fan. I will say this. We all know that these are basically top 20 defenses in all major categories. Defense wins championships. Which defense wins this game, Brian?
This is a tough one because I like both defenses. And again, I tell you, even as a Ohio State fan, this has been a tough one to really come up with for me, a score. And there's been times where I've looked at Clemson and gone, I don't know. There's a lot of things about Clemson that I like. Obviously their quarterback. offensively, they're a better team offensively than Ohio State is offensively. However, I think if you compare both defenses, I like Ohio State's defense better than Clemson. Ohio State's defense is not only great stopping, but they put points on the board. Ohio State's defense has scored 7 times this year, which thank God, because without that, Ohio State's offense at times has not been very good. I think it's going to be a close game. I'm going to go, Ohio State 20-17, because again, we're Nick Saban with Alabama, but I think when you look, obviously with Ohio State, great coaching, Urban Meyer, but I'll tell you, Clemson's coach is right up there. But I just think that Urban will find a way to get that 2017 win. I know one thing that I've heard is, they've done some things offensively. They want to be able to open up the offense a little bit more. I'll believe that when I see it. But if they do that and they can get some things, I think defensively, Ohio State can do enough to get a 3-point win.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Mike, Brian seems to be implying that Ohio State might have some consistency problems. If you're an Ohio State fan, are you worried?
I think both teams do. If you look at it, look at the teams Clemson's had trouble with this year. I think this game hinges on one thing, and that's Ohio State's offensive line. They've got All-American center, an All-American right guard. They're one of the best run-blocking teams in the country, maybe the best. The problem is you can't say the same for their line's pass blocking. They allowed 8 sacks against Michigan. It nearly cost them the game. Their right tackle, Isaiah Prince, not very good. Bad feet, bad hands, has a tendency to lean forward. So they've had breakdowns across their line when they are passing the ball. I think that's going to make it really difficult. They're going to have to run for a lot. And, really, if you look at it, that's probably what Urban wants to do anyways, to keep Deshaun Watson off the field. The other problem is this. Ohio State has a great defense. But their defensive line, they get great pressure. But they only average 2.17 sacks per game, which is 54th nationally. And if you watch Ohio State, they had to have a tendency when they're rushing the passer to not stay in their lanes. If you do that with Deshaun Watson, he's going to score all kind of points on you. So I think in the end, I think the difference is this. Watson has played a lot better the last part of the season. I think he's the best player on the field. And when you got two teams that are fairly evenly matched, and you look at Ohio State's defensive line and their inability to sack Big Ten quarterbacks, I'm going to go with Clemson 30-24.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You talked about the running game. Almost every analysis I see on this thing talks about how both teams need to get the run going, but you're talking about 2 top 20 teams against the run. Both teams give up fewer than 125 yards a game this season. What do you see in this game, Bill? What are you looking for? Oh, wait, no. Let me frame it to you this way. I got a different way to frame it, okay? Assuming Alabama wins, which team do you want to see? Which team do you want to see?
I would want to see Ohio State.
Really? Okay. All right. What you're thinking there?
Deshaun Watson.
Rematch. Rematch. Yeah, and hey, Deshaun, and yeah, you're right. Deshaun Watson, I don't want to see him again.
Yeah, but, anytime you get the best player on the field, you're dangerous.
Yeah, yes. So, but you know what? Both offenses generate a lot of yardage, man. Both of them are, over 450 yards a game in offense. Both defenses are pretty good. Clemson's not as good on defense this year as they were last year. They lost a lot of people. I don't think Clemson is as good this year overall as a team as they were last year. But they've managed to pull out all but one game. The difference in Clemson this year would be Mike Williams is playing, and if Deshaun Watson has a great game, which he does often, he's really hard to handle. However, I'm picking Ohio State in this one, and I think it's a close game. I think Brian said 3. I'm saying probably a 3-point game, but Ohio State comes out on top.
Okay. All right. Interesting. Well, Mike, I hate to do this to you.
I don't care because if you pick against me, I feel a lot more comfortable than I did the last game when you agreed with me.
Mike, I hate to do this to you, but I'm picking with you, man. I'm going with Clemson. You sorry, my friend, we have the same championship game. It's us against them, bro.
It's like a Sports Illustrated curse.
Amigo,
the curse of Oz, the biggest loser on every show. Go ahead.
Oh, on the NFL pick'em last week, oh boy, was I a curse. I helped San Francisco and Cleveland, but let's not talk about that. No, for me, Mike, you pointed out that there's some weaknesses on this this Ohio State offensive line. For me, the stat of the game is here's Clemson. They're ranked number 2 in the country in sacks with 46. I think they're going to be relentless in this game with all this time off. They're going to be nice and rested. They've wanted to return to the championship all year. I think that's what they've been waiting for this season. I think they're going to win this game. I think they're going to bring a big pass rush and close it out really early, I think. I like Clemson. I like Clemson a lot in this game. Right then. Anything else? Let's see. Who should I go to? Mike, how about some last words on this game?
Last words on? I thought I gave you my last words. I gave you a score. What else could I say?
Okay. All right.
Just because you're unprepared and don't know what to ask next is not my fault.
Oh, relax. Don't get your panties in a bunch, my friend. I'm giving you as much airtime as you can stand. All right.
See, unlike you, I don't need the airtime.
No, I crave it. I
know you do. It's like crack cocaine to a California liberal.
Oh, it is. It is, my friend. Right. Let's do this then, Mike. Why don't you tell us about the exciting things you do at thegruelingtruth.net as we slowly sign off?
So you really have nothing else, right?
Not really, no, because we covered the other shows.
I will say this. We got Bill on, and we still need to do an interview with Bill on his book, High Tide. Make sure you get that on Amazon. Definitely. It's a great read. To tell you the truth, Bill, I'm halfway through it. My problem is I have 3 kids that have a problem of interrupting me, and then I got to do these shows with Oz to grease his ego a little bit. So
that's all right, man.
But I think we ought to let Brian have his final words, too. Is it anything like the NFL Pick'em show last week, Brian?
I'm going.
No, I'm good. I mean, we got the NFL Pick'em show here in a couple hours, so I can start gearing up.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know who the biggest loser was last week, but I'm hoping it was Oz.
Oh, it's got to be me. Oh, it's got to be me.
Because they got something special for you if it is.
I'm sure it is. Yeah, I'm sure you do, big boy. I'm sure you say that to all the boys.
What is that supposed to mean? You're making gay jokes and you're a liberal. That's not right. That's incorrect. I mean,
Bill, I think this is our time to sign off.
Yeah, no kidding. They need to have a private conversation, obviously. I'll tell you what, I'm gonna sign off with my final score for Ohio State Clemson. How about that?
All righty.
Okay. Give it to it.
31-28.
All right.
Ohio
Thanks,
State.
Bill. You in for the championship game next week?
Absolutely.
All right. Even if it's Washington?
Even if it's Washington, but it won't be. Roll Tide.
Okay. I can tell you this. If it's Washington, I will not even say I was right once.
Hey, I'll give you your credit, buddy.
Oz, I will not brag.
That's okay. That's all right.
Because it's been ruined for me because Oz will be bragging too, so it'll totally take away any of the sting.
Not a problem. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Bill.
Thanks.
Good night.
Bill. Thanks for joining the asylum this evening. Right then. Okay. Mike, do you want to put in a word for any other GruelingTruth.net shows?
Yeah, I'll put a word in for Brian Schmidt. His Pittsburgh Steelers won the AFC North title. Sure, that was fixed since the Bengals didn't win it this year. But, Brian, you want to tell everybody what you and Dwight Stone have planned this week?
Okay.
Champagne, celebration, a lot of that stuff that you can do on a podcast. Yeah, we're going to get into obviously the game, and what a great football game that was. Whether the Steelers would have won or lost that game, that was a great game.
Yeah, it's great.
And we'll talk a little bit of about the final regular season game and in a little bit. Do you rest guys? Do you not rest guys? And get in a little bit about the Terry Bradshaw comment on Tomlin. I thought that was very interesting, and some of the lash out that has come out of that. So some interesting conversation going to happen this week.
All right, and Oz, I know you did a Ram show with Tony Hunter the other day that will be out tomorrow on thegruelingtruth.net.
Yes, sir. It's coming out tomorrow. Tony and I, in an effort to discuss the current day Rams as little as possible, once again bring on a special guest, a former teammate of Tony's from the 1980s Los Angeles Rams 1.0, I guess we would call them on the Rams 2.0 show, Ron Brown, all-pro kick returner, wide receiver for the Los Angeles Rams, also gold medal, world record-setting Olympic athlete in 1984. Quite a lot of interesting stories, and one of the coolest, humblest, most well-centered dudes we've ever had on the show, I think.
Yeah, he's
not
a great guy. We interviewed him on the Legend
myself.
show about 6 or 7 months ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good one to listen to, so please check that out. You can hear me also getting all of the picks wrong on the NFL Weekly Pick'em show, which we're still going to run through the playoffs, right? We're still going to run.
Yeah. I mean, me, okay. Brian, and Matt are not big losers, so we're all tied for first with 1 week left and then the playoffs coming up. And this week's games will be the hardest to pick because you don't know who's playing what, and we're doing it on a Tuesday night, so it's a crapshoot.
Okay, so what else are you doing, Mr. Goodpaster? I get to turn it back on you.
Well, you can check out our Inside Boxing Weekly show. We had a year-end awards with myself, Jeremiah Pricer. We had Hammer and Hank Lundy, who recently, or earlier this year, lost to Terrence Crawford, one of the top 5 pound-for-pound boxers in the world. And he is fighting. He's coming back from a torn ACL, fighting Friday night. But you can hear our show with him and his opponent. And then, like I said, we do the year-end awards. Also, make sure you check out the NFL Pick'em show with, of course, Brian, Oz, Matt Andrews Scavage, Mark Cooper, Ed Cohn. Mark formerly was with the Buccaneers and the Broncos, was a starting, I believe, right or left guard in the Drive game in 1986. And also, you can remind everybody to check out all the shows on iHeart, iTunes, Spreaker, Stitcher. Anywhere you hear sports podcasts, you'll find The Grueling Truth.
Okay, we won't be doing our next show, the College Weekly Pick'em show, until 2017. So I got to ask the obligatory question before we go. Mike, you got any New Year's resolutions, or are you already perfect?
Well, I have a New Year's resolution, not fire your ass anytime soon, but Brian's trying to talk me out of that.
Okay, well, thank you, Brian. Do you have any New Year's resolutions besides stopping?
Yeah, I'm going to start an over-under pick on how many times I F-bomb Oz in 2017. So
Jesus, really? I mean, this. I feel like
I think Mike started it out at like 72 times. So I don't know.
No, we only had one all year, so I mean the over-under will be one. I just think you'll crush it before the NFL Pick'em shows are over. Because we know that Oz cannot keep quiet, especially when he is losing so bad. I mean, he picks the Browns every week for like a month solid, and then the week he doesn't pick them, they lose.
I know. I went more than a month, I believe. I know. Well, I know. But we'll save this for the NFL Weekly Pick'em show.
Yes, we
will.
Let's
sign off here. This has been the GruelingTruth.net's College Weekly Pick'em show. I'm Oz Davis for my co-host Brian Schmidt and Mike Goodpaster. We are out of here. Happy New Year. Enjoy the games, and we'll talk to you next week.